the other day I was talking to my friend and I was like, when you like find a band that's really exciting, all my friends will like this band. And she's like, no, you're excited because none of my friends know about this band yet.
Exactly.
Do you kind of approach book selling that way?
We do.
Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Ellie Blue, the Vice President of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
So this week, we bring back the Bookstore Solidarity Project. In the book selling world, everywhere you go, people are talking about Class Bookstore. It's like comes up in conversations like you wouldn't believe. As the proprietors of Class Bookstore, what do you want people to know that's not getting out there?
We are kind. Look, I think we want people to know that we are an option, that Class Bookstore is a independent bookstore that is here for the community, and we exist because of the community, and so we need the community support more than anything, and that we are the bookstore that loves streetwear, and so we're a little edgy, but we're fun. And you'll probably find a book you never knew you were looking for, is what I would say.
So what about Class sets you apart from other bookstores? I'm very intrigued by this streetwear. Feel free to go in that direction or any direction.
Yeah. So I am both of us actually are huge fans of sneakers and streetwear, hip hop culture. And so we always try to bring those two worlds together, whether it's the design of our merch to the physical build out of the store. When people come in, we want people to, feel like we're not the quote unquote average stuffy old bookstore with books stacked to the ceiling, and you get this overwhelming feeling of claustrophobia. But I think that's really more so the thing that we want people to feel like, that, books are dope. Books are cool. Just like you go and you buy a nice pair of Jordans, we want you to have the same feeling when you buy a brand new release.
I love that. That's cool. Do you have anything to add?
Dara?
No, I think David said it perfectly. Books are dope. And so the same energy you get when we buy a fresh pair of sneakers, it's like we want you to have that same high when you cop the latest book.
Yeah, that's great.
Is it possible to get a Books Are Dope sticker from you all, or Books Are Dope merch of any kind?
Right.
Anything's possible. Say less.
Love it.
Noted.
Right.
Break out the button maker.
That's a freebie. We're just tossing that one out.
I'm gonna throw that out there. I'm gonna catch it.
And so I definitely cannot relate. I definitely do not own more than 70 pairs of sneakers. I definitely do not hold on to ones that are well past their point because I like them. But I will say I've never drawn the parallel before that you just did, where that was it was like I grew up in Cleveland, so that kind of street style was really important to me. And but I never, and maybe this is kind of your point, I never really had, I don't have a high school education, so I did some stuff and then I found cool books and then I was like, wait a minute, books are dope, and I definitely had that feeling. So is that kind of where you're going with that?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think the issue a lot of times is the reason why people don't do things is because it's not associated with being cool. We always want to be a part of something, whether it is, if it's anarchist culture or punk rock, you want to know about that band that nobody knows about, that hasn't gone mainstream. That's part of the coolness of it. Having the dope pair of sneakers before everybody else gets them, that's a part of the dope culture. So taking that, replacing it with books, replacing that with literacy, replacing that with reading. If you can make that, that's really what we're trying to do. That's really the alchemical proverbial philosopher's stone that we're trying to create at Class Bookstore. And if you can do that, then boom, you'll have everybody shopping with you.
Nice. So what about you two, like personally in your history and your psyche, like what made you go into book selling? What made you be like, books are the new sneakers? We're going to do this.
Yeah. So books have always been a part of our story as individuals and as a team, as a duo. David was working in a bookstore shortly after college, and that's actually where we met. We met in a bookstore.
Romance.
Cue the meet cute sounds. My friend and I had read a book. We graduated from college. We read a book that was like a good place to meet men. We were like, we're gonna find some boyfriends. We are young, we're ready to go. And so we read this book, and it was like a good place to meet men is like a bookstore. And I was like, yes, I love reading. Let me find a man who likes to read. And we went into Borders Books, RIP Borders Books, man. We went to Borders Books, and there was this super cute guy working behind the register, and we struck up a conversation about Elf on the Shelf. And I started going back to that bookstore almost weekly to see if he was working and take a book recommendation from him. And we did that for like 2 months. And then I was like, hey, I keep buying all these books and I really can't afford it because I just graduated from college. I'm just in here really trying to talk to you. You did have some good book recommendations though. And he was not afraid of that. And we started hanging out. And that one conversation turned into 15 years worth of relationship. And so David also comes from a family of entrepreneurs. And so he always wanted to have his own business. A part of our relationship, David was already super cool. And so he helped make me very cool. And so we knew that we both love streetwear. We had developed this love for streetwear while also still being avid readers. And we're like, how can we make those things go together? And so we just tossed around the ideal of class, and we would travel a lot. And when we traveled to cities, the things we would look for, we wanted to find where Black people were. We wanted to find a Black-owned bookstore if the city had one, or a bookstore, independent bookstore. And then we wanted to find good Jamaican food. So those were the 3 things we looked for in every city. So we start going to cities, we start hanging out, and then we went to Los Angeles on one trip. And shout out to Esau One. Esau One was a great bookstore, great Black-owned bookstore. The owners recently retired. But we sat in there with Mr. James, and he gave us the game and was like, hey, you can open a bookstore, you can do it. And that was 2015. He gave us all the information we felt like we needed. We left with a list and courage, and we held on to that until 2020. And then in January 2020, we were like, this is our year. Nothing can stop us from opening a bookstore. I don't know where y'all were in 2020, but right now, February 2020, that was a catastrophic event that totally changed our perspective. But we were not dismayed, and we spent our time in quarantine really trying to figure it out. And then November 2020, we were like, hey, let's do it as a pop-up, even if we don't have a physical location. And we started slinging books out the bando. We took $800, got some books, and flipped it and kept going. So it has just been, it's been a joy to do that with David. And yeah, it's been fun. David, did I get that?
I think you hit the nail right on the head, boo.
David, does this align with your version of events? Do you have anything to add to this testimony?
I do not, Your Honor. I do not. The big A, otherwise known as Amazon, we are active resistors against that. And so when we sell to people, when we hand sell to people, we try to put them on to titles that they wouldn't necessarily go for. There's a term in sneaker culture called Tier Zero. Tier Zero is a product that is so cool and so dope that you don't know you need it until you see it. And so to be able to present to somebody a book, that is probably in the same wheelhouse as their interests, but they might have been thinking they wanted this particular thing, but they come to Class Bookstore, they're like, oh snap, like they got this book too. It's like, yes. So for example, a person that's looking for a book on the Black Panthers, you know, they might pick up Seize the Time by Bobby Seale, but we also have the book about the Black Panthers having a record label back in the 70s. And they were producing shows for James Brown and Sly and the Family Stone. And so it's like, dang, they were doing that too? It's like, yes, they weren't just out here fighting the power. They was also playing Fight the Power, you know? So
they were playing, they were creating a soundtrack to Fighting the Power, you know?
Word, exactly. Yeah. So that's pretty much our approach to it. And it really helps because people always say it, man, I wouldn't have found this on Amazon. It's like, exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. What are your favorite books to recommend? What are your tier 0 books?
My tier 0 book is the book that started me on my knowledge of self. It's called They Came Before Columbus by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. And it's a book that talks about for thousands of years before Europeans came to this country, or what we call North America or United States, there were African people that were traveling here, specifically during the reign of Abu Bakr, who was the king of Mali before Mansa Musa. They were brothers. And so he sent ships over. The first time he sent ships, none of them came back. Second time he sent ships, one came back and told him, yes, there is a land over there, but we weren't able to make it. And so finally he gets on the ship and he goes over. He never came back to Africa, but there are tales in the Aztec Empire that talk about a Black man with gold braided in his beard, with gold pavilions, golden spears, and a white robe. And he stepped off the ship and they worshiped him as Quetzalcoatl, the returned feathered serpent god. And these are all documented things, you know, and what I love about Ivan Van Sertima, he's not just spitting out these theories, he's giving you evidence. He's showing you pottery. He's showing you commonalities in language. He's showing you art that was similar in Western Africa during the same time period as the Aztec and Olmec Empire. But yeah, that's a book that I always find myself recommending to people. That's my tier 0 book. And usually when they look at it and they hear it, they're like, okay, yeah, I got to have this on my shelf.
You've sold it to me. I'm ready to read it tomorrow.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we don't have it. Well, okay. So I'm going to connect the dots further. So I know that story because of the band J Church, who is absolutely a tier 0 band. And they would wrap that kind of history into their songs. And so they did an album like that's concept about that. And it, you know, and it was like one of those things where, like, you know, and this is 30 years ago, like I never would have known about that, you know, like I was just like some kid growing up and being like, whoa, this is actually really interesting, you know, and like that, and you know, like any kind of history like that, where you're like, wait, you know, and when you're younger, you love it when like you find out your teachers lied to you, or they don't know, even better. You know, it's like you can tier 0 your teachers. you know, like that was gold. But
speaking of bands, you might want to look up Ma'afa, Maafa. Shouts out to Ma'afa. They are based out of New York, Brooklyn, New York. The lead singer of the band is a graduate of Berklee College of Music. She's a classically trained bassist, but she's a like punk rock hardcore musician to heart. And all their music is that type of. So if you like that band, you might want to try Ma'afa.
Nice.
We are going down a path. I love it. I'm writing all this down. Don't worry. It's
rabbit holes on rabbit holes. I love it. What are the most fun days, and what does a typical day look like as booksellers?
I think the most fun days, I have a love and a like for event days. They can be crazy, but they can be some of our most intriguing our best times. So every first Sunday we have a poetry night. And so it's an open mic poetry night every first Sunday. And that's kind of been one of our signature events. And it's been so, it's one of my favorite because currently the crowd it runs the gamut like of personalities, age groups. I mean, you've got young folks in there, you've got older folks in there, but the elders in our community have really become attracted to it. I guess because there's not like a lot of hookah smoke and all kinds of crazy things. So they're like, okay, we can do this. Like we have a tea bar, and they're like, okay, that's a little bit more, along the lines of what they're looking for. So just how much we have gained parents and grandparents that have just decided that David and I are their new children, are their new niece and nephew, and come in and check on us. And they're like, they come to the event and they're like, how y'all doing? Did y'all eat today? Or they won't even buy a book, but they'll slide a $20 bill in our hand. We want to support you. We got to keep y'all in the community. And it's like, you can just spend $20. They're like, it's okay, baby. This is what you need.
Oh, I love that. I love it.
I mean, it is amazing. And they are obsessed with us and we love it. The attention is ridiculous. But it's really sweet and it's encouraging and it's the first of the month. And so some days in bookstores, can be mundane. You can have some really exciting times, but also it can be really quiet. But that first Sunday, we know is going to be it's going to be popping. It's going to be fun. We're going to leave encouraged. We're going to feel so loved up that it does give us the energy to do the rest of the month. Like, it's great.
I love it. And I love it because like you can be cool, but you can also be like palatable to all ages.
Yeah.
Because like it's not often the parents that are buying the books for the kids. Sometimes it's the aunts. Sometimes it's grandma, and so like you gotta be like, you can't have like if your setup is alienating those people or not even alienating, but it's like if they go in there and they don't feel like it's for them, they're not going to be your regulars. And those, and they're the kind of people that would love you forever. And or slip you $20. Also great.
Or a hot 20,
Hot 20,
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be crisp too.
So what do you like? So you're seeing what's coming out, like you're dealing in books, you're like a really good filter for books. So what do you wish more publishers understood about bookstores?
I think the thing that I think that publishers should understand, yes, we sell books, but we are also a conduit of culture. We provide a way for a third space. We are a community center. We are more than just that. And so I think that if publishers really wanted to do good work, great work, people work, they should ask us like, hey, like, aside from having an author signing or a meet and greet, what are some other ways that we can contribute to you guys' success? And I think that if they start asking questions like that, then we could get a lot more done. One of the things that we were told by many of the bookstores that we traveled to in our pursuit of knowledge about this industry was, give back. Always be ready to give back. Don't just buy. Don't just allow people to consume and not put some of that money or some of those resources back into the community you're in. And I think if publishers were more willing to align with us in that regard, and it would make them look way better. I know we heard about the debacle that happened earlier this year with Scholastic and them trying to So it's stuff like that. You don't have to be tone deaf. If you ask the right questions, you won't be tone deaf. So that's what I think.
What about like what are your interactions with publishers like? And is there anything that you like they seem to think is important but isn't actually important to you?
This one I feel like is my this is my pet peeve right now, the hill that I'm dying on. When you run a bookstore like our bookstore, in the sense of there's a lot of different elements in it, but a lot of folks who are constantly, they're not always with the establishment. We have people that come to our store and they will say like, and we run a strong social media campaign, we do all that, but we have people who are like, oh yeah, no, I'm not on social media and I won't be getting so, but they are faithful customers of ours, and they will come in and we know we have to notify them by email, by pigeon or something, or they're just going to check in regularly because they have disconnected from they like, I'm not doing that. But they are very real. They have very real dollars that they spend with us. What bothers me is that publishers will look at our social media numbers, likes, and counts and think that that is the totality of our bookstore. And that's a lazy way to do your work. That's a lazy way of doing things. And I'm not a content creator. I'm not a social media influencer. So when you look at one bookstore and go, that bookstore has 50,000 followers, you know what I'm saying? And then it's like, oh, in class, they got 5,000 followers. It's like, well, yes, I have 5,000 followers on Instagram. That does not mean that's not the totality of my customer base. That's not the numbers that I'm doing in totality. That is just the people who are following us. Like that's not it. That doesn't give a full picture. So I dislike when publishers kind of play the social media game as opposed to getting to know the profile of our store, sitting down and talking with us and understanding some things don't need, or even like some events or some books are going to sell themselves. Like I don't need 5,000 followers or 50,000 followers if Barack Obama releases another book. That book is going to sell itself. It doesn't matter how many followers I have. He has it. And a book in an event with him or a book like that, that'll change the profile for any store. So when publishers play that game, when they play the numbers game in social media, as you can see, I'm on a hill dying right now, but that's my one for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of absurd because just like the way social media has changed over the last 5 years, especially, it's like, what does it matter if you have 10 or 50,000 followers? They're not going to see your posts. They're not going to buy your book.
Nope. And I can buy them followers right now. We can get on the website and buy and run the numbers up. And tomorrow we'll have over 100K. We can do it.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Is the thing is like how many of them are real people? How many of them are organic? Like it's it's like numbers is just numbers. It's not like they're not customers necessarily. It's like customers. It's like a whole different set of statistics.
Yeah.
So, but that's and we run into this too because like hard to assess like the size of anybody's platform, but. So, what's the most important thing about book selling for you?
I think the most important thing about book selling is you have it's not just a thing that you do. It's understanding that you have the potential to like change the trajectory of somebody's life. And I'm not just saying that to be corny. Like when prior to me meeting Mr. Howard working at Borders, when he told me about They Came Before Columbus, I had no knowledge of that book. When he put that book in my hand and was like, yo, you should check this book out, I was like, I was set on a course. It changed my whole everything. So I think that, that to me is it's paramount to book selling, knowing that you can put something in a tangible object in a person's hand that could change the trajectory of their life hopefully for good, ideally for good.
Yeah, I mean, I swear this is the best thing about being a publisher, and I guess we're also a bookseller, so maybe we get some for that, but like the fan mail that we get where people are like, I found this thing in your store and it totally explained some aspect of my life that I was completely unaware of, and it put me on a path, and now that's like who I am. And you're like, whoa, that's a responsibility. And it's like everything from like people, we did like free Mumia merchandise 28 years ago. And there's people that more than 20 years later were like, that's where I found out about that. That's what made me an activist.
Wow.
And then it's like, and then you find out like, this is really important to me, and I'm going to just go find and you're like, that's a heavy responsibility. But then then you can kind of like ease into it and be like, oh, that's really cool, because then you're shaping lives, which, and I just thought it was like, and when you're like growing up in punk rock, you're like, you have a social obligation. So you're like, it's kind of like, it's your job to be an evangelizer of these kind of social issues. You don't think that it's like ever gonna come back around like that, but that's super cool.
So you've been recommending books opening minds. What are your customers telling you they want and showing you they want that just isn't available out there, or that hasn't been caught on to yet? Like, what are emerging trends that publishers should know about so we can make the books that your customers need?
I definitely think a lot of people are starting to journal more, and I see a lot of customers coming in looking for journals, especially to kind of do like that self work, the inner work, and wanting to kind of process through things. There've been a lot of writings about that. But I think the actual to be able to work through it and like find when I have workbooks for things, people are like, oh yeah, okay. That's super interesting. So I've noticed that when it's kind of like they've learned all the therapy terms and they're like, okay, I've read all the books about it. And I also think how to get out of the hamster wheel, like grind culture has been on for so long. And so when books like, Rest is Resistance come along, the Nap Ministry, and how to, not grind, I think people are really starting to look for ways to and not necessarily like escape and go on a vacation, but just to literally bring it in their daily life of how can I just not be grinding for the next paycheck, the next this, the next that. I deserve to exist in a peaceful stance and not be stressed to the max. I think people are starting to look for more readings to get out of grind culture.
I like that.
Thanks for those tips.
Yeah, and that Unf Your series, like Unf Your Life, Unf Your da-da-da, like that is, more stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks for being into that.
Yeah.
And I'll also say this, and shout out to Microcosm. The pamphlets y'all do, the zines y'all do, like people eat those up. When we first started buying books from y'all, the felon, like how to help a felon workbooks, like people be like, man, like because we work very closely with a nonprofit here called Restoring Justice, and they are a nonprofit that is really much pushing bail reform and providing pro bono law services for people who can't afford attorneys. And so, when we have stuff like that that's on our shelf, people know, okay, yeah, they bought that life too, and it's really helpful. Like they like, man, thank you for having this, because I really want to take this home to my cousin, sister, aunt, niece, nephew who is trying to figure stuff out.
Thank you for saying that. When I acquired those, I got a lot of pushback where people are like, who are we going to sell these to? And you're like, I mean, people are out there, like there's not a lot of resources. There's almost no economical resources. It's like and the author made it because they were like, there's nowhere to even find this information in one place. Like you can try to go to a social services agency, but they're going to discriminate against you because they got all kinds of biases. And I was like, oh, right. So excellent point. And I mean, I know people, and I've seen like what people do when they're coming out and like trying to, so it made a lot of sense to me. So I'm really glad that you can appreciate that, because it's like those were always like, I think about it in the scope of like, not only like my own life, but like the lives of people around me, where I'm like, this is something where like I can envision who this is for, and so it's good that like you can see that too, because it's like Not every bookstore is ready for what we are.
The literary industrial complex is not catering towards the felon audience, and they should be.
Right.
I'm like, because they get, I mean, we've had, I remember it was a couple months ago, we had a brother come in and you could tell that he was on a journey and trying to figure some things out. He was in our store for a long time and he was like really quiet. He didn't want any book recommendations. But when he finally, David kind of like told him some things. And then when he came to the register and started talking, it had come out that he had recently gotten out and was just like trying to stay on that straight and narrow path. And so the fact that he found our store, that he felt safe enough to come in our store and share his story with us was such a privilege. Because people don't realize, first off, people in jail read a lot. And it's
a lot, bro.
And so when they get out, that is kind of something that they know. So creating a space where they can come and say, all right, this is something I did that was good for me. Where can I continue to find books that will help me? So I don't know why, but I mean, we'll continue to be that safe space. But they should consider it. But we'll always buy them from y'all. So
thank you. And that's the other thing that's kind of wild. We're like, even the unfucked books, like, when we did stuff 20 years ago, that was always treated like, we didn't do that author or that series, but we did stuff like that. And the response was always like, oh, that's for people that have bad problems, or that's for people that, like, that's not me, whereas like today, younger people and even older people, even like my generation, like they're coming back around and they're like, oh wait, oh yeah, that's a resource that helps, so like I think the world has kind of shifted around back to like how we do things, maybe more, not to like pat ourselves on the back, because it's more like we were shouting to avoid for a long time, but it's neat to see that like stores like yours, like you can be like, okay, people have problems with anxiety, they have problems, with all kinds of things, they like need help building a network, so that's rad. So like, do you have each a funny bookstore story to share? I know you do.
You want me to go?
Well, I was gonna go. So we started out as a pop-up, right? So 2021 was like our first pop-up. And we just started doing pop-ups. And we have had, I'm just gonna condense it into one story. We've had so many people come to our table, they see what we have, and they're like, oh, I can blah, 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 word vomit on you about all of my conspiracy theories and all of my crazy zany ideas. And I always find that funny, because after they've talked your ear off for about 35-40 minutes, they don't buy a single book.
Oh no, that's not what they're there for.
No, we're not.
Oh, that's not what we're there for?
That's not what they're there for.
They're there to teach you, not to learn anything.
They're like,
I gotta understand the assignment.
I know.
Right.
I always love when people come up to our table, or when they come in the store and they're like, now, did y'all write all these books? It's like, no, that picture, that's Michelle Obama on the cover of that book. Why would you think we wrote that? That's my favorite. It's like, now, how many of these, did y'all write all these books? It's like, no, we didn't write any. We're booksellers. That's a completely different career.
Yeah, that happened as recently as this past Sunday. We were doing a pop-up for Malcolm X's birthday, and a brother came to the table. He was like, so you this is your work? So it's like, no, sir, that's Malcolm X on the front cover. That's autobiography of Malcolm X. Yeah, right.
We still get that too. I mean, and we'll have like 12,000 books in our catalog, and people will be like, how many did you write?
And you're like, hard at work today. But yeah, and it's kind of weirder when you're like, they ask, did you write all these? You say no, and somehow they hear yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like,
wow.
No, I definitely said I didn't. I definitely said no. No, my favorite is our store is located in a historically Black neighborhood, Third Ward, very popular Black neighborhood in Houston. We're right next to the campus of a historically Black college, and we next to a historic Black high school, the high school George Floyd went to, and we're across the street from a housing project. And so we have all these different cultures clashing together. But we had a book crawl last month for the whole city of Houston. All the independent bookstores came together. So we had a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily find our store, come to our store. And I saw this little minivan pull up in the front of the store. And this woman got out the passenger side. You could tell the car was still running. And she came in real quick and she's like, I'm here to get the bookstore stamp. I've never been this far back in Third Ward before. she was so nervous. I was like, you sweet white woman. It's going to be okay.
You could have sworn we was right in the middle of the crack epidemic.
It was like she felt like she was coming into a drug house, to buy crack. Man, but she looking at it. She grabbed the book real quick, this one will work. I'm gonna buy this one and get a stamp. Okay. So wow. I was like, class bookstore, making white folks nervous since 2021.
Did you play a prank on her?
No, we did not.
We should have. I should have.
That one would have had a heart attack.
Somewhere.
You two are very intimidating.
Yes.
You know us.
It's the beard.
Right, the intellectual look. I know makes people uncomfortable.
Right.
The glasses. That's a dead giveaway of a drug dealer. Someone without 20/20 eyesight.
Well, I'm glad that you're keeping it real for the entire city of Houston. And that bookstore passport program, maybe that's doing more to break down barriers than anything. Who knows?
Exactly.
And maybe that woman will come back.
Maybe.
I hope so. Probably only in the daytime, but she's welcome.
Yeah.
Well, if you're listening and you recognize yourself, please go back and visit them at class.
Please.
And everybody else, if you're in Houston, go visit class. Where can people find you?
You can find us online, www.classbookstore.com. We also are on social media, so feel free to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Everything is Class Bookstore, all one word, spelled correctly. And we have a YouTube channel. So we always post when we have book events, recap videos. You can go back and watch. And did I miss anything there?
Oh, that's everything, including Facebook. But yeah, all the social medias, Class Bookstore. Yeah. I just have one thing. If this is the end, I would be remiss if I did not tell y'all how much we love Microcosm.
Right.
Y'all are the number one. Y'all are our number one. Whenever we are ordering books, if we do not, we are just big fans. Every time we're on in your catalog, you always show something that I'm like, oh my God, we need this. We have to have this. In my world, if my store could be 85% Microcosm titles, that's my dream. I love what y'all are doing. We are big fucking fans.
Huge. For real.
Huge fans. When people ask us about I'm like, go get an account with Microcosm. They are doing it. I love the work y'all are doing, guys. Please know you have a fan of Class Bookstore. We love y'all.
Thank you so much. The fandom is mutual now that we've met you, for sure.
And for real, we just had dinner with Bob, who sells Texas for us. And if you know Bob, he was like, every publisher that I work for, every one of them is asking me about this Class Bookstore, and then he's like, how did Class get to every single one of these publishers? They've all met Class and they're all like, we got to get some more books into Class. And they're not all publishers that would get books into Class. And that was almost the best part, where I was like, so you're cool and sought after and
with a belle at the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's a bad thing if you're making some people uncomfortable. I feel like that's actually a sign of success. That's part of the job.
Well, what did Dr. Seuss say? The people that mind don't matter, and the people that matter don't mind.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub,
On Twitter at Microcosm,
on Facebook at Microcosm Publishing,
on Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
and here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.